to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have an agenda here, and as printed or amended will be followed. The mic goes on. Agenda as printed or amended will be followed, so all necessary needed actions of the council will be addressed tonight. The agenda can be amended by the council members by proper motion for discussion items. The business on the floor is welcome and allotted for on our agenda. If you would like to say something on the open floor, we have a sign-up sheet in the back. When comments from the floor are made, first you must be recognized by the presiding officer, myself. Second, state your name and address for our records, and then you'll have 3 minutes to state your comments or concerns. If you'd like to see a copy of the agenda, they are available on the back table. There's a sign-in list if you haven't signed in yet in the back. And please silence your cell phones. All right. So I will accept a motion to approve or amend the agenda as presented here tonight.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
I would like to move one of the claims under consent item B, claim number 1332, to item number E in council items and drop the current, council items D as in David and take the existing D and make it E.
What was that claim number?
What? 1332.
So that becomes item D under council items, and item D switches to item E.
Correct.
Any other amendments?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
I would like to add something under introduction of new items. However, it's really not an item, it's more just of an announcement of some community events occurring this weekend.
All right. And we are short one council member tonight, and a family emergency, and so Dan called and said he would not be able to make it tonight. Our thoughts are with him and his family tonight. All right, any other amendments to the agenda? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the agenda as amended?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Commander Heath.
Yes.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening. First of all, I wanted to start out with, every year we try to bring up some of the deputies that serve the city of Nowthen through the contract, just so they can be introduced to the council can meet them and any citizens that are here. So tonight is our night to do that. And with me tonight, first of all, Sheriff Stewart sends his regrets. He was planning on being here and had to unfortunately alter his schedule for another meeting that he could not miss. But he did want me to send his regrets and thank the council for their continued partnership with the sheriff's office.
Well, we know it was an important meeting because you don't skip a chance to be in Nowthen just for anything.
Yes, yes.
And we thank him for his, and we appreciate the partnership as well. So.
Yeah. Well, with me tonight, I always like to let the deputies introduce themselves and tell a little bit about themselves. I'll just give you their names and ask them to come up and they can just talk a little bit about their history with the office. Tonight with me, I've got Sergeant John Pills with our office, Deputy Jesse Cutler and his canine partner Diesel, and Deputy Matt Madison.
Good evening. My name is John Pills. I've been with the office for 27 plus years. I've been with the SWAT team as a team leader, probably 10 years, but with the SWAT team for 22 and a half years. I'm the night shift supervisor tonight and half of the week. Other than that, I don't know what else I don't have a lot of other responsibilities anymore.
You do So as night supervisor, what can you tell us about things of interest or things we should know in the city of Nowthen?
It's a pretty quiet community, as you probably are aware by your call load. There's other cities that have a lot higher call load and require a lot more deputies to cover, to service their area. But Nowthen is pretty quiet at night, especially.
Do the deputies appreciate that, or do they get bored?
Well, typically, we're running so short-handed, we have one deputy from the Nowthen border to 65. So there's a lot of area in between that has to be covered overnight. So they find things to do, depending on who the deputy is.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
We do appreciate your service.
Thank you very much.
And the length of time there. Hopefully, we'll never need your SWAT services here in Nowthen.
Yep. Good boy. That's a good boy. My name is Deputy Jesse Cutler. I obviously work for the Enoch County Sheriff's Office. I've been with the Enoch County Sheriff's Office for 4 years on patrol and 2 years in the jail. I just got my canine partner Diesel in May of last year. We just went through a 16-week canine school where we certified partially through the USPCA and fully through the National Police Canine Association in patrol dog work and narcotics. Some of what that consists of is he's training the ability to track either vulnerable adults or suspects of crimes. He's also trained to sniff out narcotics, the four main narcotics being marijuana, cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine. He also does what's called article searches, so if a suspect or somebody that I'm tracking leaves articles behind, he's able to find those on the tracks. Among other things, he also does criminal apprehension and so on. Diesel comes from the Czech Republic. It took him 20 hours to get here. It's an 8-hour car ride from the breeder's location to the airport, and another 12 hours from the flight to the United States. He's going to be 2 in June, and one of the reasons why we use these dogs for police purposes is because of their drive. They do not quit. I had to learn that the hard way when I first got him. He was a lot of fun, and I was not used to that in the beginning, but we're slowly becoming a pretty good team. So that's about it.
So why the Czech Republic?
That's where most of the dogs come from. That's where a lot of the breeders are. There's a consortium of breeders in the Czech Republic that a vast majority of the trainers, not only in the state of Minnesota but across the United States, utilize. So that's the reason why we get them from there. Usually the dogs in the United States, not all of them, but some of them have health issues. And the reasons why we get them from the Czech is to prevent some of these health issues like heart problems or hip dysplasia, things of that nature. So that way this dog can serve the community longer. And these dogs, the Malinois, have a lifespan between 10 to 15 years. And usually it's up to the 15-year mark until they retire.
Really? So they keep going the whole time?
Yeah.
Will he be your partner this time, or will he ever train with somebody new?
He'll be with me.
Does he go home with you?
I'm sorry?
Does he go home with you?
Yes, sir. Yep, he lives with me 24/7. So I have an indoor kennel for the winter time and then an outdoor kennel for the summertime for him. So
And what is his service time? As needed, or is he on patrol with you?
He patrols with me. So my regular shifts, he comes with me. So our 5 on, 5 off, 2 on, 2 off schedule. So every time I'm working, he's with me.
And how many canines in the department?
We have 4. Yep. 4. Okay.
He's pretty.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can say that about him, but you okay with that, Diesel?
Yeah. It's a good boy.
He's sweet.
He is.
Nice.
Very personable dog. He is you.
Yeah, but I wouldn't want to be the criminal apprehension side of that.
No.
Is he
No.
good with children?
I don't have kids. He doesn't understand them fully yet. I don't bring him around kids much. But as that time comes, I'm sure he'll be more accustomed to them. But he's fine with adults right now. He's just a little weary around kids because he doesn't get it.
Two. It's two. Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you both. Thank you, Diesel.
Yes. Thank you for your service, both of you.
You gonna follow that?
I know, I was gonna say, my story's pretty short and boring compared to both of them.
I'll make something up.
Well, I've been with the office for about 4.5 years now. I started in November 2014. I started in the jail, worked there for about 2.5 years, and I was promoted to patrol 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago now. So I've been kind of working my way, trying to get to K9 is actually my goal as well, so it's been nice having Diesel around, and Jesse lets me train with him and all that, so kind of still fresh into the career, so.
I
But it's
didn't
been-
catch your name, sorry,
Oh, sorry, yeah, it's Matthew Madsen.
Matthew.
So what attracted you to law enforcement and the sheriff's department in particular?
I actually have grown up in this area. I lived in East Bethel. I was born and raised East Bethel, went to high school, St. Francis, so I've been in the area my entire life. Law enforcement specifically, it never really came to me until about high school. I just realized I was more of a hands-on type person and also didn't want to go to school for 10 years to do something else in like medical field or something like that. So law enforcement is where I ended up. Just something a little bit more exciting, changes every single day. I get bored easily, so it's nice being able to do my own thing, have a lot of freedom to kind of roam.
And you're learning the medical now anyway, aren't you?
I am, yeah, I kind of get a little bit of the best of both worlds there. So,
So how you know, I've often thought I speak to our firefighters quite often because, you know, theirs slightly different as a volunteer. They think they're going home for dinner or a good night's sleep, and you never know what's going to happen. You're on patrol for 12 hours,
12-hour shifts, yeah.
and so yours is more keeping alert from quiet to suddenly you're the first person on a scene, whether
Yeah.
a medical or an accident. How do you find that transition? I mean, I often think it's incredible when I go to a fire scene, and I know the deputies were the first ones there. Or when we've had medicals in the neighborhood, you know, the deputies show up, and to go from what you're doing to suddenly on, like, how do you make that transition? How do you?
We kind of just keep that mentality in the back of our minds the entire time we're on the road. We're constantly looking and observing and kind of expecting something to happen at all times. Even when we're talking to people day to day, you just never know. I mean, who you're talking to or whatever, everything just, it can change in a split second. So it's kind of always just in the back of your mind. It's part of the job. You kind of just expect that. And it's hard to say, but I mean, you're never totally relaxed on the job. 'Cause that's just part of the nature of the beast, I guess.
Oh, we appreciate it. We appreciate that you've chosen this and that you are willing to serve us here and now then. And so we thank you for your service, all of you, and greatly appreciate our partnership with the Sheriff's Department. It's been wonderful. So.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you all.
I have a question for Commander Heath. Now, two of the deputies tonight, and in the past, when they've come to introduce themselves, many have started as jailers. Is that the typical progression, or?
It's not always,
Okay.
no, so some sheriff's offices you'll see around the state, they start all their deputies in the jail. That's not how we do it, but a lot of our people do come from the jail. What they do is they'll get hired on as a detention deputy working in the jail, and some of them attend school and get some of their law enforcement training out of the way while they're working, and it gives them experience dealing with people, and it gives them experience working in that setting. And it also gives us, as an organization, a chance to see people and know, you know, boy, they're working really well in this environment. It's a really good chance that they're gonna work well in this environment here as well. So that's kind of how that works for us.
So what percentage, say, would be deputy first? Or a jailer first, excuse me.
I'd be just absolutely
Okay,
guessing,
that's fine.
so I don't know, but there's quite a few that have started in the jail.
And then why they're detention deputy and going to school, does Anoka County assist with tuition reimbursement at all?
Not anymore. There,
No.
years and years ago, there used to be a program, there was tuition reimbursement, but we haven't had that for years.
Okay, all right.
Just, it's a budgetary thing. One
Right,
of the
I get,
first-
yeah,
One of the first things to go,
yeah, all right, thank you.
yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. And, you know, for some of the council that doesn't know me, some of you have listened to me talk for years and know me, but, I've been with the office for 15 years. And I've done 12 years in other police agencies, so I'm just finishing up my 27th year in law enforcement. And for here, it's been, for me, it's been a very good career. I've done everything from patrol work to school resource officer. I've been a detective, investigated crime scenes for several years. Was a sergeant, a lieutenant, and now a commander. So I've been very fortunate to play all those different roles and get to try that. And like Matt said, I tend to get bored easily. So for me, it's very nice being in a larger organization that has a lot of different things that I can do. So that's kind of my story. But one of the things I really wanted to point out is it's really the men and women, those guys, you guys get to see me every month and talk to me, but it's really those guys and the women out there that they're actually the ones coming out to the calls at 2:00 in the morning, and they're the ones responding to the medicals and to everywhere else that do the business of helping keep the city safe. It's not me. I sit in an office and work behind a desk. But all of the thanks really goes to those folks that are carrying out the mission and helping keeping the community a safe place. So I really want to make sure that's the focus, is those folks.
Well, you know it wasn't you.
Well, just in case somebody was thinking, I wanted to make sure that we had
No,
everybody.
we appreciate the teamwork and certainly the people that are responding in our city. As I say, most of us hope never to see them in duty, in action, certainly the SWAT teams. But knowing that they're there and it does seem, as we look at our reports, that the medicals are increasing significantly.
Yes. And even though for a time in my career, I was a negotiator on the SWAT team, and I've been on calls and now then, and called you afterwards, letting you know what was going on. But that's one of the things that's nice for the city is all of those things are at your disposal. I mean, and we're very fortunate as an organization. Our sheriff and our county board believe very strongly in creating a good public safety service organization, and I think we try every day to deliver that to the cities and the community that we work in. So it's nice not to have those things, but boy, when you need them, I should say it's nice not to need those things, but when you do need them, we're very fortunate to have them at our disposal.
And to have people that are familiar with our community, so when there is a call, they're familiar.
And I laughed, I was looking through and some people think that you'll hear, there's a lot of talk sometimes about contract law enforcement and like the sheriff's office can't provide as good a service as your own police department could. And I laughed because when I was getting ready for my report to the council, I was looking through through our daily reports, and I saw a report from one of our deputies who was driving down a street and visually recognized somebody standing in a driveway that had a warrant for their arrest. And you're driving by on a street, it's pretty difficult to, if you're not in tune to what's going on in the community, it's pretty difficult to recognize that. So I was very happy to see that, not only does the deputy know the people in his area, know who they are and can identify them from a distance, but knew that this person had warrants for their arrest. And then even when the deputy approached him, he gave him a wrong name, and the deputy stuck with it and ultimately got the right information. And I think he had 4 outstanding warrants. Several were felonies for drugs and things like that. But it was nice for me to see that, hey, our people are getting it. They're paying attention to what's going on in the communities that they're working in. So that's a nice thing for me to see.
Well, that's part of the we appreciate the continuity that we've been able to establish here too, so.
Yeah. And I'll keep it real brief. I apologize, I got long-winded and these guys were talkative, and so it was nice for them to chat with you, but I know you guys have a whole agenda to get through. Just a couple of quick things. For the month, we did have for the month of March, we did have 141 calls for service that we responded to. And if you've looked back through the last couple of months, it's been, we started out with 151 in January, 134 in February, and 141 last month, and we're ahead of pace for 2018 already. So just something to be aware of. And like you mentioned, last month in the city, we had 14 medicals, which was a high number for us. That's a lot of calls for those type of things, but just something to be aware of.
A quick story that when I was meeting with somebody that had opposed the sheriff's contract when it first came up a number of years ago, and I was visiting with them, and they said they changed their mind, because the first time was Thanksgiving a couple years back now, that they ended up needing the medical. And Thanksgiving is, who's gonna respond? And the deputy that responded, he says, saved my life.
Yeah.
And he said then later, the next year, he had an employee who he was looking to dismiss, and the employee didn't want to go. And he needed to call the 911 again, and the same deputy showed up. And he says, I've changed my mind on that contract. He said, saved my life, and then may have saved my life a second time.
Sure.
So the fact that he saw the same person and he saw the service that we were convinced we would have if we had this contract. So.
Yeah. It is beneficial. And I did, before I go, I wanted to comment on Bar None. I'm not sure if everybody saw any of the media coverage on Bar None, but the Department of Corrections did come in and found some violations of their rules and regulations when they did an inspection. I did look at the Department of Corrections report. There were 12 different findings that were made, and Bar None has till May 15th to address and correct those findings. I know the mayor and I have talked multiple times on this issue. We've met many times with Bar None to try to address some of the issues, but they're obviously, they are still ongoing, and I'm not exactly sure what the resolution is to try to help make it a little bit more user-friendly, but sometime, last month our calls for service were up there pretty good. And we had 14 calls to Bar None last month. So that's a lot of calls.
I was talking with the deputy commissioner on that, told her about the 14 calls, and she agreed that was an awful lot, that they'd come in for other reasons, but they are asking if the sheriff's department can go through their records and give them the statistics on the number of calls and the types of incidents they've been called out to. And they're asking the city to give them any information on meetings we've had at Bar None with the county. So any information that the county has or that the city has, Sarah Walker, deputy commissioner, would like that information forwarded to her.
Well, and since you've already spoken with her, would you mind if I got you the information and
That
you
would be
could be the
fine.
conduit to her?
Yep.
But what I already, after our conversation before the meeting, I've got a note for the calls for service. And what I'll do is I'll look to go back as far as I can here, maybe 2014, to give them a 5-year snapshot of what it's been like there. And then if they would like more, we could work on that.
We should check with St. Francis too, because I know they were involved in some of the meetings.
And just for the council's own information, myself, the commander of our patrol division, and the chief of police of St. Francis have met with staff and management from Bar None. I've met with them on multiple occasions to try to address some of the issues, and we understand sometimes they're in a tough spot and they have to call, and that's not what we're not telling them not to call. We're just trying to see what the issues truly are and what can be done to address it, to reduce the use of resources that ends up getting funneled towards some of those things. So,
Well, yeah, especially when you spend time gathering people back together and have to run them to another community and then do the reports on it. It ties up a lot of resources for a long time.
yeah, and this isn't just it's not just a now-then issue. It affects the citizens of Oak Grove, St. Francis, you know, and it takes, you know, many times just because of the proximity, St. Francis will come and assist us, their police officers will, just because they might be 5 minutes closer than our deputy. And on some of the calls, it makes sense, but it does become a resource issue at some point as well. So that's, and the last thing that I did want to let you guys know, we're still in the process of getting our 2020 budget done. And for contract purposes, the only things we're going to be looking at right now are just, there will be some increases, but it's just strictly from our prices of squad cars are increasing and our labor prices are increasing, you know, with collective bargaining agreements and those costs. We don't have all the firm numbers on that yet, but I just wanted to at least let the council know that there will be an increase, but it's only for those reasons. It's not for, you know, calls for service or anything like that. Right now, it is just strictly costs that we will incur to have staff on hand and put them out in the field that we'll end up having to pass on to the city as well. So, and as soon as I get that information, I'll pass it along to the city. It's just right now I don't have it, but I didn't want to wait till the last minute and not say anything.
We appreciate that. We're hoping to start our budgeting cycle earlier this year too, so that will be helpful. So.
Does the council have any questions of me or Mayor?
Council? No? Well, thank you, and again, thank the sergeant and the deputies for their time.
I will.
Appreciate them stopping in.
Right. And if you don't need anything, I'm gonna take off tonight.
No, we should be good.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you. Take care. They gotta stay. So, until the 15th of May, when they're gonna reevaluate. All right, we'll go on to floor items, which I'm assuming there's none. And there are none, so we'll go on to planning and zoning. Proposed changes in the building material. Liz, you wanna?
Sure. So as some of you may recall, we had a recent request for the use of Galvalume, and we went through a little bit of a research, discussion, kind of a learning process about the difference between galvanized and Galvalume. So we want to incorporate some language to, which clarifies how we want that to be used, or where, you know, it's limited. And then, and just in general, I went through the current exterior building materials section and just compared it to some other communities and upgraded a couple minor things, the first of which is on page 1, and wanted to talk to you about adding custom masonry units which have a brick-like appearance, such as Structural and some other companies sell, which are placed over typically a metal building, but doesn't have to be metal. So our grade A materials are typically brick, natural or artificial stone. So if we're allowing artificial stone, it makes sense to allow artificial masonry units. I'm just calling them CMU. I don't know if there are other names for them. And then the only other question is whether we want to leave stucco as a grade B material or if we want to include stucco as a grade A material, because that material as well comes in different finishes, different colors in these panels, which are placed on the exterior of structures. And a lot of them look like real stucco, but they're not. And then the other,
So as far as that, anybody, I'm comfortable leaving it as a grade B at this point.
okay,
Anybody else in the council?
you're good with that?
So
Okay,
I'll keep that as a grade B for now.
okay.
And so while we're on it, so let's stick to the custom masonry units. What's the council's opinion on having that as a grade A surface? Grade A material.
Are these pictures of it?
Right, the first page following the text is, CMUs can look like brick, they can look like block, you know, or, as you can see, they vary significantly in the finishes.
Now, one of the questions with the Galvalume, as they said, in particular, keep away from masonry products. So, again, this being a custom masonry unit, this would be one where we want to make sure in our regulations that we identify that while we approve Galvalume, it can't be in contract with masonry or like.
Right, now some of
Materials.
these are dry set, so there's no masonry involved with the installation, so I'll have to research maybe just a hair what, you know, how they put them up. Maybe there's a adhesive product that they put the panel up with that doesn't involve the masonry or the cement, you know, use.
Yeah, we should make sure that we understand that if we're gonna, especially if we're gonna allow both, so.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
would that not be the responsibility of the building owner and their contractor and the distributor they're buying from to make sure that they are adhering to the specs for that product?
You would think so, but it's similar to when the treated materials, treated lumber, moved away from arsenic and started using the copper. It changed all the fasteners, and not everybody in the field was up on the transition. And I was helping somebody with the project in Arden Hills, and their inspector waited until they were doing the final inspection, and then they asked to see your fasteners. And I just want us to be ahead, because while that is their obligation, if they don't do it right, we're gonna be stuck with the bill. And I was real glad, because the deck was all done. He was ready for us to pull it apart again, and we knew that. So apparently that was their pattern, ask after and then make them redo it.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Rainville.
I'm in favor of adding the CMUs, but my question is, you've also got precast in here. Are you considering that as a CMU too, Liz? Because I don't see that anywhere else in here.
I put, no, I guess I wasn't real clear on that, but if you look under grade C has architecturally precast concrete panels having a smooth as cast finish.
Okay,
And so
so that's that, okay.
that is a grade C product, the precast. Now, some people are allowing that, like putting that up into, as you can see, it's also under grade B, but it's a different finishes specified there. So like an exposed aggregate, a light sandblast, acid etch. So some of the, I guess I'm assuming, kind of higher quality looking finishes are allowed as a grade B. To me, that was somewhat confusing. And whether or not we want to keep it the way it is, maybe figure out what the difference is and then reconsider, or if we want to just lump it all precast is grade B or C or whatever you want to So just kind of bringing it to your attention and then showing you the precast pictures so you can see how it varies. And, you know, there's no question that it can be used in very high-quality architectural situations. But you can also have, I've also seen it, you know, in industrial buildings where it's not necessarily poor quality, but very plain and very simple, you know. So mostly just want you to think about that and
All right, so on the grade A, the brick or custom masonry units. Anybody opposed to that on the council? I see all the heads going in the right way on that one, Liz.
okay.
All right, page 2.
So the change there is regarding the Galvalume. Item B, about the middle of the page. Steel or aluminum buildings, except in association with farms as defined by this chapter, no galvanized or unfinished steel or unfinished aluminum buildings, including walls or roofs, except those specifically intended to have a corrosive design finish, such as Corten steel, and then I added, and Galvalume, and it used to say shall be permitted in any zoning district, and then I changed it to say shall be permitted as follows. So on roofs of any non-residential building, which is either clear coated or painted, a standing seam design would be allowed with hidden fasteners, as long as the roof pitch does not exceed 312 for a clear coat, which is like a bare look Galvalume or galvanized look, and roof pitches greater than 312 must have a painted finish. And then I would propose adding for D, the contact with masonry. And then the other thing, the Galvalume was not good for animal, buildings which house animals because of the urine content and all that.
You do have that there?
I did not add it, but I was.
You're going to add that?
Going to add that, yeah. And then item 2, walls on non-residential buildings incorporating steel or aluminum shall be required to have a painted finish. So we're only allowing the Galvalume, which is the natural look, unpainted on 312 roofs or lower pitch. So they're not highly visible from a road and that kind of thing. And typically a pitch like that is used on those storage type buildings or more industrial situations. So, if that sounds okay, that is similar what we allowed to the property owner recently and now then. And then I made one clarification under item C. For the purpose of this section, exterior finish materials requiring integral color shall not include natural gray, meaning it can't just be plain concrete, it has to be colored concrete, like a tip-up or a precast.
All right, any other comments on that, those changes? So you can get the item D on B1. Send it out to us,
Okay, sure.
please.
Want it sent out soon? You mean before the next meeting? And
Yeah.
Okay,
Please.
okay. Sounds good.
All right, item B, updated CUP and IUP list. The assessors are looking for information to help them refine their assessments.
Right, The assessor has requested an updated list of interim use permits and conditional use permits. We do have existing lists, but they're out of date. It would be nice to coordinate so that we were treating everybody equally that does or does not have a home business. And, you know, kind of basically working with our assessor to, so that people that do have a commercial aspect on their residential property are split taxed equitably. So we would just take our current list and go through that, and where needed, send letters to people, asking them if it's not obvious to us that they still are in business. And some people that do have a CUP are not interested in having that revoked because it does run with the land. So the only way to remove a CUP from a property is to have a public hearing and actually revoke that. If a property owner is not in favor of it, we as a city could choose to leave those in place at the property owner's request. Some people view that as, a value to their property, because if someone else buys, they can run that business under that existing CUP as long as they meet every condition attached thereto.
If they don't, and they live there and don't meet that, and therefore don't operate the business,
Right,
and then they sell, it's still there for some future.
right,
It doesn't die in between like an IUP would.
right, exactly.
So
And
even if they're not using it, it's still an adder to their property.
right, and from what I've seen, most really don't or can't meet those conditions unless it's an identical business. You know, it's pretty tough. So you can't have a septic guy with conditions for a CUP covered for, a cabinet maker or whatever. It's just not gonna be the same types of issues.
So the request is permission for staff to generate an updated list of CUPs and IUPs through the assistance of the city planner. What would you be doing on that? Who has the list?
Well, my knowledge, we both have the same list. I have some notes already as far as people that I may already know are not operating. Or I would assist Ellen or staff with, recent issuance of IUPs and CUPs.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville?
I would like to move that we table this until we have a new clerk treasurer, so that person can determine how they feel this project should best be handled. If there's a second, I would speak to it a little bit more.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor and Council, I think that by, I'm not sure if there's an urgency with this or not. I did reach out to Eric Skolquist. I haven't heard back, but it was late in the day by the time I got through the packet, asking him the urgency. And I understand the need for treating people with consistency. I'm all for that. But I think that this is something that we would task our new clerk treasurer with, and let them decide job responsibilities, policies and procedures, so that they have an understanding of how this is going to work.
Mr. Mayor?
Senator Stockman?
I would just suggest then that we just do a bare bones update of this list. In other words, I'll make sure everything, the CUPs and IUPs that have been issued in, say, the last 9 to 10 years since I've been here are on the list. And then at a later date, we can, tear it apart and actually go property by property. But it would be nice to get Mr. Skolquist as updated of a list as we can. And then, I guess my question would be then, what do you want to do when he's how do you want to handle situations when he's identifying properties that are, where he's seeing a business and it's not, permitted?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
as far as locating business that's not permitted, that would be, my belief that would be under, we would deal with that under our new policy and procedures. I don't know if it's important that we, or if we could even have a policy in place by the time the assessor goes out to assess. So I don't know if there's a need to have the policy right now. And then a question to you, Liz, is you had said it would go back 9 or 10 years. How long do you think that would take you to do?
I would just look back through my billings, most likely our invoicing, and just make sure that everybody's on here. Some of the administrative staff that they had a few years back had done some work on this. So I don't expect it to be all the way back that far, but
You don't have a spreadsheet as we go that you just keep updating, or?
no, I mean, typically Corey would try to do that in previous years, but then in the last couple, I'd say it was a little bit lax. So I don't expect there, I would say, a couple hours, 2 to 3 max, probably 2 at the most. And I agree with Ms. Rainville's statement about, not being able to kind of figure this all out before Mr. Skogquist gets taxes done this year. He's gonna tax the way he taxes anyway. If he sees something, he'll tax it appropriately. So I'm not really, I guess I'm just thinking, more long-term as
And
far
he
as
may in that say,
equitable.
I tax this as a commercial property and leave that with the city, and whether it's on our list or not, he can let us figure that out.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And then we'd have to decide what we want to do with that.
Yeah, it would definitely be a longer discussion.
So council, you interested in 2 hours, would this be at your clerical rate?
60,
or what?
60, yeah.
Couple of hours to put the list together?
I would be fine with that.
All right, so you make that a motion?
I would amend my motion
To include
To
2 hours
to
of
include-
list preparation?
of list preparation by Liz at $60 an hour.
I second it.
It's already been seconded,
Oh, by you.
yeah.
Yeah, we just,
No,
I second the
thought it was a
amendment.
new motion.
I just
Oh, she's
amended the
amended.
existing.
That's all right.
Just the both of you.
Any other discussion on it? Seeing and hearing
I don't
none.
understand, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Blake.
I don't understand why you're going back just 10 years. I mean, aren't there people who have
Well,
had these
That's all
conditional
she's
use
been here.
permits for 25 years?
Well, there's a whole wall of file cabinets, yes,
Yeah.
full of files.
She's been here for,
I've been
I
here
know,
about
but I
10.
mean, aren't we,
that's
I
what,
mean, it doesn't
that's
matter
what
how
Mary
long.
said that the clerk and Ellen will figure out. The file cabinets that sit there, is that something they need Liz's help with? Or they're gonna do, or how do they wanna handle the bigger
Oh, so you're
backlog?
gonna go back just as long as you've been here, and then when the new person I'm just trying to understand this. The new
Right.
person comes on, the treasurer, deputy treasurer, then they'll go back and make sure the whole history of this is straightened out. Which
Well,
could take quite a
potentially,
while.
yeah, potentially. There's a lot of organizational things like that,
Okay.
that may need to be done, so wherever that falls. But yeah,
It's time to update it, because I'm guessing that it's, there's a lot of CUPs that are inactive. IUPs, if they become inactive, they're
Right.
done, so.
right.
Okay.
I'm guessing that, after, a lot of them are on here, but some of them are so old that we just don't know.
All right, any other questions or comments? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I would like, Ellen, if you could put this in a tickler file so that we can revisit this to complete that updating of the list once we find out what our resources are gonna be. Please. Put it on a pending, I don't know what we're coming in May yet, so. Well, let's discuss it in May. If it's too busy for May, we'll put it in June. All right, we have a consent agenda with one minor item taken out. Have a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move the consent agenda as amended.
I second it.
All right, we have motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have mediation and restorative services for Anoka County. Carol Markham Cousins. Didn't realize we had invited her again to this meeting. Our email went to her spam. So she did call today and say she had other arrangements, but she did put the May meeting on her schedule. She would like to come out and explain their services, what benefits there are to now then, and educate us. We need to make sure we give her the right date. So remember, our meeting in May is the 7th, because we've got the road project on the 14th. And so she will be invited back to that date. All right. Joe, thank you for the map, by the way. That was helpful. How'd your article go to the,
Perfect. Thank you for asking. Right, Joel?
What's that?
Our article was perfect.
It was perfect.
Yes, thank you for asking.
can you recite it to us real quickly?
4 score
Yeah, I was
and
gonna
20.
say,
All right. The Upper Rum River, I think, there's Dan here. So Councilmember Bryan is not with us today. Councilmember Greenberg, you want to speak to this at all?
Trying to find it.
Would have been the one that
This
was
one.
on the desk tonight when we came in.
Good job. Take mine. I'll take yours.
Wait. I haven't found it yet.
Well, here, can you use this one? If this is-
That's, yeah,
Take
that's,
Dan. Let's see.
It's the last page on your packet.
Here, I've got it right here. Dan's, I'll take it.
Okay.
Joel, look on the bottom of what's in your hand, it's the last thing.
Oh,
See,
so the 2020 draft budget looks like they want $10,553 from now then.
yeah, so what does the council think about that?
Have you been to any meetings yet, Joel?
I have not.
Well, the 19 plan was 7,700, so we're going up $300. $3,000, excuse me. Are we getting that much more water in now then? I mean, it does seem like, because it's a good idea to keep clean water, but it seems like this thing kind of grows itself. I
Yeah.
don't know what activities we're doing, and I guess that's why we need you and Dan to step in there and say, what are we doing that's worth another $3,000? How much more activity is there a now then? And as we mentioned when the representative came here this, a couple months ago, they were looking for projects, and the projects were all in some other city. They had no projects in now then. They said, well, create some, and we'll try and get some money here, some attention here. But we're cleaning up things in Oak Grove, we're cleaning up the Rum River, we're doing a lot of things outside, and as you look, we are the second highest on the list. We don't have that much water. We've got Ford Brook and we've got a few lakes, 10 technically. So I guess the question is, when we look at the types of things, $1,000 for websites, or 600. Projects as detailed in 10-year plan, $15,000. I guess we would like our representatives to bring that information back and say, what are the $15,000 worth of projects in the 2020 budget? And
Right. How would it affect
and
us?
what are we paying? What are we paying for? Administrative expenses are almost $29,000.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Rainville.
To Councilmember Greenberg, the other thing that would be very nice is that they are consistent in how they're describing things, because there's just a couple things that it's not the same, if looking at the dollars that we spent in 19 versus the numbers that they're asking for us in 2020, the verbiage is different. So I don't know, it's hard to compare what is going up for us. We know it went up 3,000, and other than the financial audit, which was required in 2020, which is $242, and that's spread equally across the board. It's hard to determine what it costs are increasing, because we can't compare apples to apples.
Well, and when they refer to like the projects as detailed in a 10-year plan, in 2019, it's 5,200. In 2020, it's 15,000. So, that's 10,000 of the $20,000 increase right there. And so without the details of projects as detailed in a 10-year plan, what kind of projects are we doing? And I haven't heard any of them coming here, and while I appreciate that we're contributing to the entire watershed, it just, sometimes it seems, somebody's doing lake water quality monitoring on East Twin and Pickerel. Are we getting any of those results? Are we doing anything about it? And I know when I used to go to the meetings, they would say Lake George is deteriorated from our last monitoring. So we'd say, what does that mean? It has a little more salt, it has some fertilizer, I mean, is it unswimmable, you can't eat the fish out of there? No, it's just slightly worse than it was. Well, there was no context. Slightly worse meaning where on the scale of livability or usability. So the main thing I think we're getting out of this is we're requesting that you and Councilmember Bryan do your best to get details and challenge, are we just raising prices because administratively we're spending a lot more money? And we know that when they were here last fall, that it did seem like we need projects, give us some projects, because we've got money we can get if we have projects. Well, that money comes from taxpayers. And so we just want to make sure that our representatives are doing what you can to hold them accountable. And
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Greenberg.
would you, here's a funny question, would you like to see a project in now then?
I would say if there's something of value that contributes to the quality of the water here, the maintenance of the water here, I'd like to hear it discussed. As we said to them when they were here, just making up projects to get more grant money doesn't necessarily mean anything if you're making up projects. if there's a project that's valuable, and we can present it in a way that residents say, man, I'm sure glad some of my money's going towards that, absolutely. But if it's something just to keep people busy, because I work for an agency that does this for a living, and you got water, I can do something about it, that's not so interesting to me.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, Councilmember Greenberg.
how about if I ask them for their recommendation on the area that they see most vulnerable in now then?
Well, I would say that's probably in the studies that they reference here. If you take a look, they've got a packet about that big, and they'll tell you all of the things that were suggested already, and then the watershed's comments as to, we don't want anything to do with that, or we would strongly suggest we do this. Start with that, because that's probably where they'll send you. So look at the study that they've already done. But when it comes up to new ideas, you want to say, okay, here's what we've got. You've got this binder full of things. You know, what is really valuable? Obviously, we got something as nice as Twin Lake. We don't want the water quality to drop off in there. But is what they're doing actually going to make a difference?
Mr. Mayor,
I'd like to know, because I've never heard the results of East Twin or Pickerel Lake monitoring.
they
Who's doing it and what are they doing with it? Councilmember Blake?
They monitor the lake level monitoring. Do they monitor like the swimming beaches and the health of those areas and all those lakes?
It's my understanding they're monitoring the contaminants in the water, which would affect swimming and,
Okay,
you know, if it's,
they are doing that. Okay.
you know, fertilizer, fecal matter, sodium.
Right.
And what they get to is like you get down to Rogers Lake, that's considered an impaired water. Because so much runoff is going into that small shallow lake that it's got a concentration above certain limits, and so it's considered.
Because farming.
I couldn't tell you down in that area if it's road salt, farming, what all it is. It could be the number of wetlands around there that just leach into the water that's not moving.
And how about Pickerel Lake? Isn't that a pretty large lake?
Large but shallow.
Real shallow, okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so if you could, as you get a chance, look through the information that's there and try and hold the line on justify these cost increases. Going up $20,000 in a year is significant. And we've seen some watersheds just keep going up because they can't. It's one that people just don't pay a lot of attention to because we don't hear about the watersheds. And everybody wants clean water. And we do, but I don't want to pay people that aren't really contributing to that clean water. You know, if we're just doing monitoring but not doing anything about it, then what's the point? Anything else on that one? So Dan's. So what they're saying is, yeah, help us put together some projects so we get funding. They're looking for grant funding. In order to be eligible for grant funding, a comprehensive plan has to be approved and will require some administration to coordinate tasks. Largest part of the increase, which gets shared equally across different cities, is having part-time administrative help. Joel and I are looking for any feedback on the proposed budget for next year. It's too high. $20,000 increase is too much.
Growth curve is unsustainable.
Yeah. And generally, that's where, back in 2009, so in 10 years' time, we were at 13,000, we're at 33,009. 2010, we were at 18, now we're at 53. So we've gone from 18,000 to 53 in 10 years. see, 9 was 13, 10 was 18, 11 was 16, 12 was 12, 13 was 12, 14 was 13, 15 was 13. They went up 10,000, and so from 16 to 20, we went up $30,000. And in the previous 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, we went up 10. But for 5 years there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years there, we averaged $13,000.
Yeah.
What changed? Those are the questions that we typically have asked our more conservative members to ask. What changed? And if you get this thing rolling, all of a sudden we've gone from, 16 we were 23, 17 we were 23, 32, 33, 53. The momentum is building and
Right.
nobody's checking it. So my input as feedback that's being asked for here is we need to check that. Why is it growing exponentially now? And as new members, they should explain it to you. And if it's not thorough, then you have our permission to make a mistake. Respectfully. But, put your foot down. This is other people's money. Let's make sure we're using it properly. Any other feedback for the, I'm sure Dan will look at this before he goes to the next meeting.
Mr. Mayor,
Dan? Councilmember Greenberg.
what if we outright refuse to pay the new money, the
Increase.
increase?
Ask that question. I'm not sure. Do you remember what he said when he was here?
No, the question
The
was.
concern was if the watershed doesn't do their thing, that the state will give it to another watershed that's a lot more liberal. Some of these people have gone out and spent large sums of money buying buildings because they need office space now. I mean, this is an appointed group, and they're putting in office buildings, and it can grow bureaucratically pretty quick. I don't know that we can just refuse, but you can ask. Right now, if we can just slow down the momentum, I'd be happy. But if you can find something more creative, that's great, but I mean, it's significantly changed. And I think that's what you're seeing is a turnover on the committee members. Some people are I heard a county person speaking at a meeting a couple years back, and he said and that county department was addicted to opium. And we all looked at him like, hey, you're speaking to elected officials here. That's not a good confession to make. Oh, not the drug. OPM, other people's money. And we said, that's no better. To treat it lightly because it's other people's money is not good. We need to treat it like it's our own. Anything else on the draft budget? So you get the general tone, Joe?
I did.
And am I speaking for the council?
Yes.
Yes.
Nice.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Greenberg.
I have your permission to propose some less than the increase that's being offered.
The council is, as a council, I believe that's what we're asking. And that's what we told him when he was here. Too much money. You want our feedback? Quit spending money.
Maybe what I'll do is talk to Dan and we'll pick some specific ones and say, these ones we don't want to see change.
Well, and I would recommend, we've always found that it's important to work with people in Oak Grove on it too, because they've regularly been in agreement with us on holding the line on that. So I believe John West and Dan Deno are the representatives over there for the watershed. So I would talk with them. Anything else in the watershed? All right, Liz, 2040 comp plan goals, policies from our March 26th meeting.
Just a few updates from last month's discussion. The changes in blue were what were discussed last month. And so you won't see, let's see, it's later in the plan here, starting on page 21, where we made a few changes that are highlighted in yellow. So number
Is this the
7.
one she gave us tonight? No.
No, this was in our packet. Front cover looks like this.
All right.
Yeah, there you
That's
go.
the back of it. Yeah.
So page 21.
Yeah, got it.
There you go. You missed it. One more. No. No, keep going this way. Like that.
All right, page 21 on that.
So planned, I'm on number 7, page 21. Planned and well-designed placement of structures and infrastructure improvements in development areas should be implemented at all times to benefit the greatest number of residents and in consideration of through streets to create connections between neighborhoods. So I'm reading under the land use policies for all residential areas. And then number 8, restrict commercial and industrial uses from locating within residential neighborhoods, except where such non-residential activities are located adjacent to principal or minor arterial roadways, where adequate buffers exist or can be created to screen existing or future residential uses. And then number 9 is commercial and industrial uses, if they exist in the form of permitted home occupations and extended home businesses, are not to be evident from local streets or neighboring properties other than allowed signage. Outdoor storage of vehicles and equipment which may be approved under city special use permits shall be kept inside accessory buildings and or screened to the maximum extent possible. And then further down on that page, the policies for RRA, just added the word agriculture to clarify that. Page 23, we talked about preserving scenic views and elements of the community's rural character. Views shall be minimized to new development from existing roads through preservation of existing significant trees, berms, landscaping, or other city-approved screening methods. Jumping down to 5, we reworded encourage rural residential transition development and open spaces which complement surrounding area. I think it should be complement, not plural. Complement surrounding areas and planned land uses, and which is consistent with flexible development guidelines to the extent possible. And then 7, create cohesive neighborhoods that establish local identity and community interaction through adoption of architectural guidelines that promote consistent community character while allowing creativity and innovation inherent to good architecture. Those sound okay?
Liz,
Uh-huh.
I just have I don't know if is it my eyes or
Yeah, I just noticed
did the
that.
type get smaller?
It did.
Okay, I didn't know if my eyes were.
Yeah, I just
You
noticed
could
that.
have played it along a little bit. We would have gone with you.
I had a headache earlier and I was like, am I seeing?
I blinked once or twice too.
Okay, all right.
And other than that, everything is, oh, sorry, there's more here. Page 29.
with 29, yes. Oh, these two were added at the recommendation of Anoka County. Encourage residents to test the safety of their drinking water from on-site residential wells on a regular basis through utilization of well testing kits available at the city offices in partnership with Anoka County Environmental Services, whoops, capitalize that E, who provides feedback on the water samples. And then monitor the need for future community water supply systems through proactive inventory of groundwater resources, including aquifers, pollution sensitivity, and locations, which may define areas for future municipal wells. So those two came from Anoka County.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
I have a concern on number 3. Number 2 is fine, but number 3 is, what road does that lead us down?
It's not,
Or,
pardon me.
well, I mean, if we're monitoring future community water supply, am I going out and, I mean, what does that obligate the city to do?
Well, the part of the comp plan this time around is to show an inventory of groundwater resources. So Met Council has that on their website, so it's something that's kind of there. I mean, for the most part, you know, what you do with that is, I guess, up to you. But they do require that to be included. I don't know, I could call them and talk to them about the last line, which is referring to future municipal wells.
And and certainly this is, the 2040 plan, this is long-term planning. The idea that at some point we'll have wells, it's like city land we want to make sure that we're not using it in such a way that we can't put a septic system or a well on there.
Exactly, right,
So
exactly.
it basically is saying, where might we be planning wells in the future, and make sure we're aware of pollution sensitivity. Aquifers, I think the county, we're not gonna study the aquifers, but the county probably has some resources that we would network with them, saying, where do we sit? A number of years ago when we had droughts and the shallower wells were drying up, you wanna be in touch with the county, say what's happening with the local aquifers. The other thing, when I moved out here, we were studying that, where the landfills were, because the water would flow from certain landfills to certain rivers, and it would affect the wells in that underground stream. And so you had to know where the water's running from Oak Grove, from Ramsey, and from Elk River, because it affected, even way over here, it could affect your well. So as a city, it makes sense to be aware of that in conjunction with the county.
Is there,
Councilmember Blake.
how about all the runoff from the chemicals that the farmers are using out here into our water wells?
There isn't any of that.
Why would you say that? I see all those chemicals being sprayed right across the street.
See, item 2.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
that's
all
why
I
they,
would do, that's what I mean.
Yeah, and that's why they're saying for the safe drinking water, we should be checking our water on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And at this point, the city doesn't regulate those, but the county and the state do. And
Regulate what?
Regulate what's going on in the lands. When my land is rented, they actually come and do a study of where my ponds are, what slope grade it is, and what they're putting on the crops that might affect the water. So I do know that the commercial farmers do have to report that, and they are watching. They've got a GPS of my land, they can tell me the slope of everything on my property. So there is some of that going on. The city is not doing it, but again, this is where we're encouraging residents to do some of that, and we, as a city, will encourage our partnership with our staff in the county and state to make sure we're doing what we can there.
So, Mr. Mayor, if you bring your water in and we have our water tested and we find there's a high percentage of chemicals from runoff from farming fertilizers and things, then what happens? Nothing?
no, there would be a way to kind of try to figure it out, if it's what source it's coming from potentially, or, you know, who's adjacent to you and that kind of thing.
Okay, just curious. Just not me, but for
My-
anybody.
Yeah, and some of that, they would take a look at the depth of the well and,
Okay.
but that's something we need to know. If more and more people are turning in their samples and they're finding a trend, then as a city, what are we gonna do about that?
Okay, just curious.
Exactly.
Not
Yeah.
something we've had to address, but that's why we're trying to put in a long-term plan here, so.
Perfect.
So that is it.
Except for the north edge of the I-1, or the I-1 district there. You got a little update on your map there?
Oh, I thought you had removed it, but that's fine. It's a minor comment from a landowner who did not want to be rezoned to
Yeah.
industrial. I'm still conversing with, the landowners who abut our current industrial district along the north end of 47. And they will be getting back to me on whether they want to be included or excluded. But it sounded like they might be willing to, include a portion of their land.
So you let us know more when you know more.
So when I know more, you'll know more, right?
All right, anything else at this point? Like that's consistent with what we talked about on the 26th?
Correct. So, yeah, we'll try to finalize this land use plan as much as we can next month and, maybe talk a little bit more about any other detailed plans such as the city center area or, but I'll figure that out. Unless you have something specific that you want to see addressed, then,
No. At this point, I think we're good.
I'd say we have maybe close to half of our, responses back from surrounding areas. And I'll shoot an email out soon here, requesting or reminding people.
You know, obviously, which ones we don't have them back yet from, so.
Right, right.
And, all right. Mary, you wanted to look at claim 1332.
Yes. Mr. Mayor, claim 1332 is the invoice from the planning company. And I would ask, I would move that we remove the zoning administration piece of that invoice, which is $5,039.28, and release the remainder $4,854. And if I have a second, I can speak to that.
I will second for discussion.
Mr. Mayor and Council, we just received the planner's invoice late yesterday, and I've still not gotten a hard copy of it. So I've not had the opportunity to fully read and understand the entire invoice, and so I'm unable to vote for payment to the full amount. And that's why I'm asking that we remove the piece under the zoning administration, and then I will forward my questions in regards to that.
Mr. Mayor?
Planner Stockman.
Well, zoning administration does include the time that was spent filling in for Miss Lind. I'm just guessing that might be your concern. But, yeah, the rest of the zoning administration is typical. I mean, it was, phone calls and other, partly code enforcement, everything at the $60 an hour rate. Is there anything I can help you with now or answer?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
Ms. Stockman, I've not had the opportunity to look through the whole piece of it. I got to that point,
I
and looked
see.
through the things that were IUP building related, things like that. I've not had a chance to look at the rest of it, so.
It was one of the challenges because a number of the invoices came in late. We are targeting the Tuesday before, but we had a number of them at 10,000 or greater this month, so.
Okay.
Just, some of them are, 20, 30 pages long. It's hard to understand what you're signing off on. So,
Yeah, and keep in mind too, that was 2 months, 2 months worth of time.
all right, any other discussion on that? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we have an update on the clerk treasurer hiring process. Councilmember Bryan unfortunately can't be here tonight, but I will speak for both of us. We were appointed by the council to represent the council in the search and to bring a candidate for the council for a vote. Councilmember Bryan and I have been following diligently the League of Minnesota Cities procedures. We had no idea they had so many procedures on pages and pages and state statutes. And so we've been working with our city attorney and going through checklists, going through rating forms, interview questions. And so we were making sure, so as the council knows, we moved from administrator offering, where we required a master's degree, and on further evaluation with what we have going here and now then, we thought a hybrid clerk treasurer that was responsible for all personnel would be a better choice for us at this point and grow that person to an administrative position. And so we revisited the posting, lowered our price range, clarified our requirements. As you remember with the administrative, one of the things we found in a lot of the candidates we're interviewing was if you're a master's degree administrator with a lot of experience, you're expecting to delegate a lot of responsibilities. And we don't have staff to delegate it to. The person has to be a working administrator. And a lot of them weren't really interested in that. So in revising our posting to a clerk treasurer, we had a couple of dozen applicants, so we had a good pool of applicants. Everybody understood the working relationship. Some of the people from the first round actually reapplied because they were certified clerks in addition to being administrators, and they did relish the chance to actually run the desk, run the front office. So, and that's what we were looking for. We got a good pool of candidates, and we went through the league guidelines. All of our paperwork was run through the attorney to make sure our questions were appropriate, our rating sheets were appropriate, and our questions and our scoring sheets were all appropriate. So all candidates were rated on the same criteria. When you have vets, you have to use a 100-point rating sheet, and so all a couple dozen candidates were put through that rating sheet, and then we selected the top 25% for follow-up interviews. Of those follow-up interviews, we selected a third of those from the top 25% for face-to-face interviews. We have conducted those interviews. So what we do in doing that, we each have our own notes, and then we transfer that to a scoring sheet. And then we take our scores and we add them up independently to come up with the rating. We took the top 25%, and then we did that same thing. Did the interviews with general questions, looking at background, looking at experience, looking at education. And from that, we did the same thing. Took our notes, put it on a scoring sheet, and took the top candidates and then interviewed those. One of the things that the league handbook stresses when you're hiring a top position in the city is you need to make sure that the person has the job skills and experience that you're looking for. But you also need to realize that the city clerk is a critical position for setting the tone of the city. And so they really emphasize, when you're doing your final interviews, you've already screened out for the experience, the training, the education. Now you're looking for the tone and the ability to work with the staff, the residents, and the businesses, and the council. So you want to make sure that you're getting a right fit. And so that's one of the things that we were focusing on in our face-to-face interviews. Dan and I both agreed when we took out our scoring sheets, and after the live interviews, that our top candidate has a skill set, the education, the experience to be highly successful as a clerk treasurer, and will set a very positive tone in dealing with our city staff, our council, our residents, and our businesses. And so the person that we have selected from that group is a former employee of Now Then. And we would like to recommend to the council that we make an offer to Lori Strike to be the clerk treasurer, with the refined responsibilities that she would be responsible for all personnel and have the administrative responsibilities for the city. The attorney is preparing an offer letter pending the council's approval. The attorney will prepare an offer letter, and that I would move that the council would authorize me, in conjunction with the attorney, to present an offer letter, and upon acceptance of that, establish a start date with the published responsibilities that we have on file.
Mr. Mayor, did you say lives in the community, or
She does.
has she worked in the city office
She used to
before?
be the deputy clerk.
Oh, okay, okay,
She now works in St. Francis.
okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rainville.
I would move that the council move forward with the name of Lori Strike for the clerk treasurer.
Second.
And with that, would you authorize the attorney and myself to make an offer?
Yes, I
And
would
on
amend.
acceptance of that offer, set a start date.
Yes, I would amend my motion.
All right? Any other discussion or questions?
Sounds awesome. Thanks for your work and diligence.
Yeah, it does sound good. I mean, it sounds like somebody who's coming in who's already got some insights and
Yeah.
Someone who was very,
understanding.
would be very, very excited about the jewel that Now Then is, so.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Mr.
All
Mayor.
right.
Yeah, I would thank you and Councilmember Bryan for all the work that
Yeah.
you did. I think it sounds like you learned a lot of what we, in a bigger hierarchy, HR handles all of that, and they know those
Yeah.
things, but it sounds like you and Dan learned a lot through this process, and
You know,
which can
it was
only make us
interesting
better.
because, as we went through the guidelines and put out the posting and the job description and each step that went along the way, and you go back through the handbook, and we would talk about, what is it we're looking for? And very, very pleased with the criteria they set up to evaluate and rate. The people that scored highest also interviewed most of them very well, so it was very consistent. But we would see things in the handbook we'd have this conversation after we'd compare notes, and we'd go through another part of the handbook, and it was almost word for word what we had discussed. So we knew we were very consistent with what they were doing, but we also know that the league has been very thorough, working with 800 cities around the state to refine their material and say, here's the type of thing you're looking for, here's the thing you want to make sure you know. And so we were pleased with that, but yes, we were amazed at the amount of details and the cautions of don't do this and make sure you're aware of this. And, there's a lot of regulations as far privacy, as far as, offers. There's just a multitude of things that, most businesses we never do. You find somebody you like, you just make them an offer. But this was, they have refined the process, and so it's very easy to follow. They literally give you a checklist, and you go down, do I have this? Do I have this? Have I done this? And so it was, Dan and I are both analytical, and so we were maybe a little slower on some of this, but, yeah, I mean, you realize that, 25 people in the couple of weeks since we've closed the applications. It seemed slow just because we're being methodical, but it was a lot of work to get through that, so.
Mr. Mayor, will she then pursue whatever, the education or whatever, to become a city administrator? Or are we giving?
Right
are
now,
we
she's
interested in-
working on her clerk certificate.
Well, she doesn't even have that yet.
No, she's actually signed up for the institute coming up here, so
And how long does that take?
it's 3 years. Once a year, every May you get one level.
Okay.
And Ellen has asked to go to that this year. My recommendation would be that we have Lori, upon approval here, acceptance of the offer, that Lori would go this year, and then subsequently Ellen would go. So Lori be in year 2, Ellen would be year 1, year 3, year 2, and Ellen would get all 3 years also. So and Ellen would be a certified clerk. For some reason, they only do it each May. The institute is only each May, so.
Mr. Mayor, I'm surprised that you can hire someone who isn't certified.
With that, in the posting, we said either you're certified and you got points if you're certified. If you're in the process, you get points, and no points if you're not certified, but you have to, the posting says you have to be willing to be certified. We only had 2 candidates that actually were already certified,
That were certified? Wow.
and one of them was an administrator
Okay.
with a master's degree. All right, hang on, we have to vote here first. So any other discussion? Okay, seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Joseph?
5D and 5F, we have quotes for them, bids.
What's that?
5D and 5F, we have 2 quotes for that work to be done.
Do we need 2 quotes?
We do. Do we just pick the one that's best or the cheapest one and go with it?
Have you dealt with both of them before?
Yes.
So it's the most cost-effective, best provider. So if the cheapest one is not a good candidate, you go with that. Yes, if it's over $25,000, we have to have 2 quotes. And keep both on file.
D&E. Mr. Mayor, was that D and E?
No, the doors,
D and F.
D and F.
You know,
That's
crack
okay,
seal,
that's
dust
good
control.
out yet.
Okay, but on the doors, Joe, don't you have 2 bids in the packet? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Just saw
Okay.
those.
Yep,
Oh, I didn't see the second bid.
yeah,
The
it's in
recycling
there,
doors?
yep. Yeah,
Yeah,
What was the second
resolution
one?
a couple $100 more.
Yeah, it wasn't a big difference.
So one of the things I asked Joe is, I don't know how people are beating those doors up so bad, but, we're gonna try and reinforce around that so that the hinge side doesn't take such a beating. We're gonna try and reinforce the frame there.
Here they
Yeah.
are.
All right, and Mary, you had a couple of,
Yeah,
for the good of the group here?
there are 2 2 events being hosted this weekend by Now Then volunteer groups. So Saturday, April 13th, the Now Then Heritage Festival will have their spring breakfast at Now Then Alliance Church. Free will donation, breakfast is served from 8 to 11. Along with the breakfast, the Lestadian Church will be selling their baked goods. And then the Now Then Lions are hosting their Easter egg hunt at Now Then Memorial Park. Registration is at 9 a.m. and the hunt is at 10:30. Information regarding the events can be found on those organizations' websites, Facebooks. Ellen has also graciously posted on our website. And I would just ask that the community show their support for these organizations that spend a lot of time donating their time to the residents to provide activities for the residents. So, thank you.
Yes.
Right. If there's nothing else, I move to adjourn.
All right. Second that, meeting adjourned.
All right.
Joe, thank you for
So it
cleaning
starts
out the
at
half of the garage there.
Come to the breakfast.
Okay.